lavish party buzzed with champagne and laughter. Then CEO Isabella Lane leaned close to her assistant, her voice trembling. "They're here for me." The grand doors burst open. Men in black suits stepped inside, their eyes cold as winter steel. The crowded ballroom erupted in whispers. "She's finished!" In a shadowed corner sat a simple single dad, quietly gripping his cheap glass of water. Jack Turner, the janitor everyone had ignored all night. Just 15 seconds later, when his gaze locked onto those men, the entire room went silent and froze. One intruder went pale, his voice cracking. "It's him!" Isabella's eyes filled with tears, finally realizing the truth. Jack Turner had arrived at the Sterling Tower 3 hours before the party began. At 38 years old, his hands bore the calluses of hard work, his shoulders carried invisible weight. Tonight, he was just another face in the maintenance crew, hired to help set up and clean the corporate gala. His daughter Ella sat on a lobby bench, swinging her legs and coloring in her notebook. 9 years old, gap-toothed smile, completely unaware that other children her age were home with nannies while she waited for her father to finish work. "Daddy, when can we go home?" she asked, her voice echoing in the marble hall. Jack knelt beside her, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Soon, sweetheart. Just need to help these people tonight. Then we'll get pizza on the way home. Extra cheese, just like you love." Ella beamed. "You're the strongest daddy in the whole world." Jack smiled, but his fingers unconsciously twisted the worn silver ring on his right hand. An old military code was engraved on its surface, numbers and letters that meant nothing to anyone who saw it. He only touched it when memories threatened to surface, when the weight of his past pressed against his carefully constructed present. The ballroom above began filling with guests, designer dresses, tailored suits, the kind of wealth that never questioned where its next meal came from. Jack had seen this world before, from a very different angle, in a very different life. Isabella Lane stood near the grand staircase, greeting investors and board members with practiced grace. At 30 years old, she had built her tech company from nothing, earned respect in boardrooms dominated by men twice her age. The press called her cold, calculated, untouchable. Tonight, her smile was perfect, but her assistant noticed how her hands trembled slightly when she checked her phone. "Miss Lane, the security team has swept the building twice," her assistant whispered. Isabella nodded, but her eyes kept scanning the crowd. For 3 weeks, anonymous threats had arrived at her office. Messages that knew too much about her movements, her schedule, her vulnerabilities. The police had found nothing. Private security had found nothing. And tonight, something felt wrong. Jack carried boxes of champagne glasses through the service entrance, invisible to the glittering crowd above. That's how he preferred it. Invisible. Unremarkable. Just another working man trying to provide for his daughter. But as he set down the last box, his eyes caught something. 3 men entering through the main doors, their movements too precise, their eyes too cold. They wore expensive suits, but Jack recognized the walk. Military training, combat experience, predators in a room full of prey. His hand went to the silver ring again, twisting it slowly. Ella appeared at his elbow. "Daddy, can I have some juice?" "Stay right here, okay?" Jack's voice had changed, just slightly. Ella didn't notice, but if anyone from his former life had been listening, they would have recognized the shift, from father to something else entirely. The party above swelled with music and laughter. Isabella Lane moved through the crowd, playing her role perfectly, unaware that in 15 minutes, everything would change. Unaware that the janitor she had passed twice without seeing would become the only thing standing between her and the men who had come to collect. Jack watched from the shadows, his jaw set, his mind already calculating distances, exits, angles. The ring on his finger caught the light. Some men retire from war, others just learn to hide it better. The party reached its peak as the executive vice president clinked his glass for toast. Jack had moved upstairs now, quietly collecting empty glasses from the high-top tables scattered around the ballroom's perimeter. He kept Ella close, letting her sit in an alcove near the service door where she could watch the pretty dresses and twinkling lights. "Daddy, everyone looks like princes and princesses," Ella whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Jack smiled softly. "They're just people, sweetheart, same as us." But the people at this party didn't see it that way. Marcus Wellington, a hedge fund manager worth more than most small countries, stumbled slightly as he reached for another scotch from a passing tray. His eyes were glassy, his movements loose with expensive alcohol. He didn't see Jack standing beside the table, didn't care that someone was there at all. The glass slipped from Marcus's hand, amber liquid splashing across the white tablecloth. He turned, focusing bleary eyes on Jack. "You, clean this up. That's what we pay you people for, isn't it?" Jack reached for a service towel, saying nothing. "I said clean it up." Marcus's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby guests. He grabbed his fresh drink and with deliberate cruelty, poured it directly onto Jack's shoulder. "There. Now you've got more to clean." "Janitor." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not kind laughter. The kind that comes from people who have never worried about money, never wondered if they could afford their child's next meal. Ella watched from her alcove, her small hands gripping her coloring book. "Daddy?" Jack stood perfectly still, the liquid dripping down his shirt. He slowly reached up, wiped his shoulder with the towel, and then knelt down to clean the spilled drink from the floor. His movements were precise, controlled. The silver ring on his finger caught the light as his hand tightened into a brief fist, then relaxed. "Good boy," Marcus sneered. "Stay in your lane, janitor. This world isn't for people like you." A woman in diamonds leaned to her companion, her voice carrying clearly. "Can you imagine bringing his child to a place like this? Poor kid probably has no future ahead of her." Another voice joined in. "Probably can't even afford proper schooling. Such a shame." Ella's eyes filled with tears. She understood enough. The tone, if not all the words. She understood that these beautiful people in their beautiful clothes thought her daddy was nothing. Jack finished cleaning, stood slowly, and walked to his daughter. He knelt beside her, using the same towel to gently wipe a smudge of marker from her cheek. "Don't listen to them. Baby girl," he whispered. "Their words don't define us." "But Daddy, they're so mean." "I know, but we're okay. You and me, we're always okay." Ella nodded in, but tears still tracked down her face. Jack pulled her close, letting her hide against his shoulder. His jaw was tight, his eyes distant. The ring twisted once, twice, 3 times on his finger. Across the ballroom, Isabella Lane had witnessed the entire scene. She took a step forward, her mouth opening to intervene, to say something, to use her authority to stop the cruelty. But before she could move, her assistant grabbed her arm. "Miss Lane, those men, the ones from the entrance, they're moving toward us." Isabella's blood went cold. The 3 men in dark suits were cutting through the crowd with purpose, their eyes locked on her. Other guests parted instinctively, sensing danger the way prey animals sense predators. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Time to pay what you owe." "They're here for me," Isabella breathed, her face going pale. "Oh God, they're actually here for me." The music seemed to fade. The laughter died. The ballroom's attention shifted from Jack's humiliation to something far more dramatic unfolding near the center of the room. In his alcove, Jack's head snapped up. His eyes, which had been soft and hurt for his daughter's sake, suddenly sharpened. He tracked the 3 men's movements with professional precision, noted their hand positions, identified the bulges under their jackets, calculated their approach vector. His hand went to the ring, gripping it tightly. 16 years since he'd worn a uniform. 12 years since his last mission. 8 years since he'd officially died on paper and been reborn as Jack Turner, single father, invisible man. But some training never fades. Some instincts never sleep. The lead man reached Isabella, his voice low but caring. "Miss Lane, you're coming with us. Don't make a scene." Isabella backed up a step, her heel catching on her dress. "I don't know what you want, but you know exactly what we want, and you know what happens to people who don't cooperate." The ballroom had gone completely silent now. Everyone watching, everyone frozen. The same people who had laughed at Jack moments ago now stood paralyzed, their wealth and status meaningless against real violence. Jack stood slowly, his hand falling from the ring. He took one step forward, then another. His posture changed. His entire bearing shifted. Ella watched her father with wide eyes as he moved past her. No longer the humble janitor, but something else entirely. Something that made the air around him feel dangerous. 15 seconds. That's all it took for everything to change. Would you have stayed silent or stepped in? The lead man grabbed Isabella's wrist, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Last chance, Miss Lane. Walk out quietly, or we drag you out." "Your choice." Isabella's assistant stepped forward. "You can't just—" The second man pulled back his jacket, revealing the gun holstered at his hip. The assistant went pale and backed away. Several guests gasped. A woman near the bar screamed, "You're coming with us," the lead man repeated. "You owe our employer something very valuable. And tonight, we're collecting." Isabella's voice shook. "I told them I needed more time. I told them—" "Time's up." The entire ballroom watched in frozen horror. Marcus Wellington, who had humiliated Jack minutes ago, stood motionless, his drunk bravado evaporated. The wealthy investors, the powerful executives, the social elite, all of them stood helpless. Their money meant nothing here. Their connections couldn't save anyone. Jack Turner walked forward into the center of the ballroom. His steps were quiet but purposeful, every movement precise. The cheap work shirt he wore suddenly seemed irrelevant. His posture, his bearing, the look in his eyes, all of it spoke of something these people had never witnessed up close. Real danger, recognizing real danger. The third man noticed him first. "Sir, we have someone approaching." The lead man glanced over his shoulder, irritated. "Handle it." The third man moved to intercept Jack, his hand moving inside his jacket. "Step back, janitor. This doesn't concern you." Jack stopped 3 feet away. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, calm, the kind of calm that comes before storms. "Let her go." The third man laughed. "Or what? You'll mop me to death?" But the second man had gone very still. His eyes locked on Jack's face, traveling down to the silver ring on his right hand. His face drained of color. "Wait," the second man whispered. "Wait. Stop." The lead man tightened his grip on Isabella. "I said handle it." No, you don't understand." The second man's voice cracked. "Look at his ring. Look at his face." The lead man turned fully now, studying Jack for the first time. His eyes narrowed, then widened. Recognition dawned slowly, like watching ice crack. "It can't be," he breathed. "You're dead. The file said you were dead." Jack's expression didn't change. "The file was wrong." The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Isabella stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, not understanding what was happening but feeling the shift in power like a physical thing. The second man took a step back, his hand carefully moving away from his weapon. "That's Commander Turner. That's the ghost." The name hung in the air like a gunshot. Marcus Wellington whispered to the person next to him, "Who the hell is the ghost?" But several military contractors in the crowd knew. Their faces went white. An ex-colonel near the bar actually saluted on instinct before catching himself. The ghost. A legend in certain circles. The man who led Black Ops Unit 9 through 16 impossible missions across 7 countries. The operator who extracted hostages from terrorist compounds that intelligence said were impenetrable. The soldier who walked into hell and walked back out, every single time, with 0 casualties on his team. The man who had officially died 12 years ago when his convoy hit an IED in a classified location. At least, that's what the report said. The closed casket funeral, the folded flag, the story that ended. Except he was standing here, wearing a janitor's uniform, protecting a CEO from armed criminals. "She's under my protection," Jack said quietly. "Let her go. Walk away. Don't make me ask again." The lead man's hand trembled slightly, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You're one man. We're 3. And you're not wearing a uniform anymore. Commander, you're nobody." Jack's eyes went cold. "I've never needed a uniform to do my job." The third man suddenly released Isabella and stepped back, his hands raised. "I'm out. I didn't sign up for this." "Coward," the lead man spat. "No," the third man said. "Just smart enough to know when we're outmatched." The ballroom doors burst open again. This time, a man in a security uniform rushed in, followed by 2 others. The lead security officer took one look at Jack and stopped dead in his tracks. "Holy God!" the officer breathed. "Commander Turner? Sir, is that really you?" Jack gave the slightest nod. The security officer turned to his team. "Detain these men. Now. Carefully." The lead criminal finally released Isabella, his bravado crumbling. "Who the hell are you people?" The security officer ignored him, his attention fixed on Jack. "Sir, I served under Colonel Hayes in Afghanistan. He had your photo in his office. Said you were the best operator he'd ever seen. Said you saved his entire unit at Kandahar. We all thought you were gone." Jack's voice remained quiet. "I wanted it that way." The 3 criminals were being handcuffed now, their weapons confiscated. The lead man stared at Jack with something between fury and fear. "This isn't over." "Yes," Jack said simply. "It is." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The ballroom remained frozen, hundreds of eyes fixed on the janitor who wasn't a janitor. The invisible man who had just become the only thing anyone could see. Isabella stood trembling, her hand over her mouth. She looked at Jack, really looked at him, seeing past the worn clothes and calloused hands to the truth underneath. "All this time," she whispered. "You've been here all this time. You were right there, and I never saw you." Jack met her eyes. That was the point. Marcus Wellington, sobering rapidly from shock, stared at the man he had humiliated. The man he had called janitor, had poured a drink on, had mocked in front of everyone. The most dangerous person in the room had been standing 3 feet away, and Marcus had treated him like trash. The wealthy elite who had laughed now stood in shame. The powerful who had sneered now couldn't meet his eyes. The invisible man had become impossible to ignore. And in the alcove, 9-year-old Ella watched her father with shining eyes, whispering to herself, "I knew it. I knew Daddy was special." The police took the 3 men away in handcuffs. As they passed Jack, the lead criminal spat at his feet. Jack didn't move, didn't react. He simply stood there, solid as stone, until they were gone. The ballroom remained silent for another heartbeat. Then Marcus Wellington did something unexpected. He walked forward, his face red with shame, and stopped in front of Jack. Marcus swallowed hard. "There's no excuse for what I did. What I said. I'm sorry." Jack looked at him for a long moment. "Your apology means nothing to me, but it might mean something to my daughter who heard every word you said about her future." Marcus flinched like he'd been slapped. He turned toward Ella, opened his mouth, then closed it again. What could he possibly say? He nodded once and stepped back, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume. Then something extraordinary happened. A woman in the crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then joined by another and another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Not the polite golf clap of corporate events, but genuine, thunderous appreciation. People stood. The ex-colonel who had almost saluted earlier now did so properly, tears streaming down his weathered face. Other veterans in the crowd followed suit. Isabella's assistant started crying openly. Even the waitstaff, Jack's fellow workers, stood taller with pride. 3 cheers for Commander Turner, someone shouted. The cheers shook the chandeliers. Jack stood in the center of it all, looking uncomfortable. This wasn't what he wanted. He caught Isabella's eye and shook his head